After the abandonment of the second day of competition in the Amman Valley, round 6 of the 2018 season is a washout, and the championship title itself is determined in favour of Toby Hales thanks to his consistency in the opening 5 events of the 2018 season. Hales cannot be caught by Gerard Bilo, his nearest competitor, but we will have a battle here at the 7th round of the season on the Greenfield Oval for 3rd position overall and indeed victory in what is our season finale. It's back to the knockout format for this final round of the campaign, and that means 2 rounds of races before we determine who goes through to the grand final. Round number 1 then, comprising 6 races, 4 heats and 2 eliminators. The first 4 races of the day feature 9 riders in each. The top third of those riders, the top 3, will progress direct through to the semi-finals. The remainder will have to go again in one of those elimination races. Looking at the lineup then for the opening race of the day, it's Peter Most who goes off the inside. Alongside him, Gerard Bilo, the current British number 2, and Gary Birtwistle, one of the 2 riders in contention for the top 3 places, alongside George Pickering. Those 2 separated by just a point coming into the Greenfield Oval. The middle row featuring Paul Young, Mike Hill and Sean Kelly, and from the back row, Simon Parkin, Martin Mills and Gary Inman, the last riders to settle in here for heat number 1. The riders then waiting for the light sequence, and we are underway. Not a good start from Peter Most, but he does manage to claim the inside line down into the first turn and runs Gary Birtwistle wide, and Birtwistle has dropped out of the top 3. Remember, only the top 3 transferred direct through to the semi-finals, so Gary Birtwistle has got a bit of a mission now to try and recover. A fantastic start from Sean Kelly on the outside of the middle row. Started directly behind Gary Birtwistle, but has somehow found his way through on the first 2 turns, and Birtwistle is now looking for a way back past. The rest of the field somewhat strung out. Mike Hill, the only other rider still in realistic contention for a top 3 qualification place at this stage, as Sean Kelly works hard to block out Gary Birtwistle, trying to go all the way around the outside on the pits turn. Just gets off the blue groove a little there coming off turn number 2. Kelly has a moment's respite, but not much of it, as Birtwistle soars around the outside into turn 3, only to then go too deep on the top turn, and Kelly is back through into 3rd place. Birtwistle really being forced to battle much harder than you would have predicted for him to make it through to the semi-final. A top 3 space with a front row grid slot. The top performers, of course, from qualifying starting on the front row, and Birtwistle you would have anticipated making his way through. He's through now up into 3rd position. He ran into the back of Sean Kelly coming into the top bend, and that's clearly unsettled him. Birtwistle comes through for 3rd, and Kelly's offline once again, and now Mike Hill is going to try and move down the inside into the top bend. Kelly has had to go deep, having run acute coming off turn 2. Hill is through, Young is through as well, and Sean Kelly has gone from 3rd down to 6th position, and although having already dropped 1 position, dropping another 2 won't matter too much. It will affect his grid place for the eliminators, as down on the final 2 turns go Peter Most and Gary Birtwistle. And Birtwistle, who was in 3rd position, who was in a qualification place, has clattered into the back of Peter Most. The 2 have gone down. Most is quicker up to his feet. Birtwistle's still struggling, and that is going to leave both in an elimination race in this opening round. And riders of the experience of Gary Birtwistle and Peter Most, you wouldn't have been expecting to have to go again in the elimination phase. Gary Inman also suffering problems in the closing stages, like wacky races on the 6th and final lap of heat number 1. Gary Birtwistle, though, is back up to his feet and rushes over the line. Gary Inman's foot power not quite equal to the power of Gary Birtwistle as he remounted there. So that will only determine grid position for the eliminators, but there's still going to be plenty of work to do for Gary Birtwistle and Peter Most as they fell on the final 2 turns. Up until that stage, the fight was for 3rd, with Sean Kelly muscled aside by Gary Birtwistle, relegated outside of the automatic transfer spots, and Kelly picks up 4th position in the end, but he'll be frustrated about that because he was clearly unsettled by Gary Birtwistle coming through, and that enabled Mike Hill and Paul Young to progress eventually after that final turn incident for Peter Most and Gary Birtwistle. So surprises already in the opening race of the day. We now emerge out onto track for Heat 2. The 3 front row riders for this one will be Michael Dijkstra, Sam Hurst and Rob Meir. The middle row riders will be Dan Ridge, Max Hunt and George Sturgis. And then from the back row, Joe Banks, Vince Hurst and Chris Hatton. Waiting for those back row riders then to settle in for this second race of the day. As I said, massive surprises in heat number 1. Don't forget, as well as the Pro Championship itself, we've got the intermediate riders mixed in to this category. So Joe Banks, for example, comes into this event just 4 points down on Matthew Porter, the championship leader. And Porter, after missing round number 5, is also missing from round 7. So Porter looks set to be unseated at the top of the championship standings, but George Sturgis comes in as a winner in the Amman Valley, just 4 points behind Banks. So those two, Sturgis on the outside of the middle row, Banks on the inside of the back row, set to duel head-to-head in heat number 2 and potentially for the intermediate title here today. Underway with a good start from Michael Dykstra. Sam Hurst is away with him. Dropping back though from the line is Rob Meir, and Rob Meir finds himself down and outside of the top 5 altogether, let alone the 3 automatic transfer spots. And we've got a faller, that's Vince Hurst has gone down on the opening lap. The yellow flags are out, and now the red flag. No movement from Vince Hurst, separated from the machine, so no great surprise that the race is stopped. Heat number 2, we'll have to go again. We were on the opening lap, of course. It'll be a full restart, but the immediate concern is for Vince Hurst, who took quite a knock there on turn number 3, just in the pack on the opening lap. Wasn't a good start at all for Rob Meir, who was trying to find his way through on the outside line. And Vince Hurst coming into your picture on turns 3 and 4 has gone up the back of Rob Meir and high sides over the machine. So a frightful spill for Vince Hurst, who was jostling for position there on the inside line. It's been a tough season for Vince Hurst, down in 18th in the championship with 9 points. He's up to his feet, which is great to see, but he doesn't look in too much of a rush to try and reprise his role in this one, heat number 2. So it remains to be seen whether he comes back for the eliminators, but Vince Hurst certainly taking a knock there in the initial running of heat number 2. Now we go again for the second staging. So no great changes to the lineup. Michael Dykstra, Sam Hurst and Rob Meir. Meir we're just waiting for to come into position on the outside. You can see he's lined up there right along the blue groove heading into turn number 1. Can he do a better job from the outside than Gary Birtwistle did first time out? It's been a good first season with the DTRA for Rob Meir. He's up in 6th in the championship standings at the moment. He and Michael Dykstra, who both line up off the front row here, 5th and 6th position separated by just 3 points, but both are set to benefit from the dropped round regulation because both missed the opening event of the season at Kings Lynn and have been ever present in the 4 events since then, the 5th of course being this 7th round here this afternoon. Waiting for medical clearance, I would suggest, before we can get underway. Clearly a little bit of a delay here. Michael Dykstra then, I've been talking about there, off the inside of the front row, and Rob Meir off the outside of the front row. Between them, Sam Hurst, another of our top 10 runners in the 2018 championship. Hurst hasn't made as good a start once again as Michael Dykstra. Dykstra, though, has gone square on turn number 1, and Hurst tries to get up the inside of him coming off the second bend before the Dutchman eventually holds sway out in front. Much better start this time around from Rob Meir, who occupies 3rd position, and at the moment our top 3 rankings are the 3 riders who qualified best into this race and started on the front row, jostling amongst themselves for the moment. Dykstra's gone square once again on turn number 2. Hurst again not quite alongside Rob Meir, looking for an opportunity to try and pass the pair of them here, as the battle now is for 4th position outside of the qualification places, remember, so this is only going to determine grid slots for the eliminators as things stand. Max Hunt coming through at the expense of Dan Ridge for 4th position, and Joe Banks surprisingly down in 6th place, but up ahead of George Sturgis. So that direct head-to-head battle that I was talking about between 2 of the top 3 in the intermediate championship at the moment is going in favour of Joe Banks, despite a fairly steady start to the opening round of races here at the Greenfield Oval. Battle still for 2nd place. Rob Meir looking for the outside line, though, almost speedway style on the top bend. He's got to be careful because Max Hunt might try to find a way through as Dan Ridge goes down. Ridge down on the exit of turn 4. Disaster for the number 28 because that's going to leave him up against it in the eliminators. The yellow flag comes out to signal that the riders can't overtake on that zone of the circuit, but Ridge eventually clears the track and off up onto the infield, enabling the race to continue into its final lap. Still Rob Mir trying to find a way past Sam Hurst. He's got a good run on the inside line coming off turn 2, but overlocked slightly. And while he's being backed up, the pack closing in, led by Max Hunt. I don't think there's going to be time though for the 2-4-3 to get on terms and into the top 3. So it's Michael Dijkstra who wins heat number 2, ahead of Sam Hurst with a good defensive ride in second. He didn't have the pace to keep up with Michael Dijkstra out in front, but he did do well to hold on against Rob Mir, who was trying all sorts of different lines. The wide line on the top turn not really working for him, and the inside coming off turn 2 also not proving fruitful, as defending well Sam Hurst takes an automatic transfer spot to the semi-final stage. It's been a tough season for Sam Hurst in 2018. Didn't live up to the expectations that were generated by an excellent 2017 campaign, but a direct transfer spot through to the semi-finals will be a relief for Sam Hurst here today. He doesn't have to scrum in the eliminators. Neither does Rob Mir. All 3 of the front row grid riders in that one, heat number 2, marching directly on. Max Hunt best of the rest in 4th position, and Joe Banks inheriting 5th place after a fall for Danridge. Disappointment for him. The identities of 6 of our qualifiers then to the semi-finals are already known. 6 more to be decided over the next 2 races, heats 3 and 4. The lineup for heat number 3, Kai Fort goes off the inside starting position, the number 40. Alongside him, it's Leah Toklov, and Toby Hales, the 2018 Pro Champion, completes the front row of the grid. The middle row, Sky Adams, the number 76, Wesley Aegis, the number 111, and Anthony Brown making his first appearance of the 2018 campaign in the Pro class. The back row of the grid, James O'Hara, Hub Breedveld, and Chris Jenner. So another 9-rider lineup. The 3 riders from the front row of the grid transferred last time out in heat number 2. Will the situation be the same here for Fort, Toklov and Hales? As they wait for the lights, the starting marshal moves away, and we are underway. Good start from Leah Toklov. The number 37 gets to the first turn first and takes the whole shot. Toby Hales looking back to the inside line, coming off turn 2, but can't quite get there. And it's Toklov who leads us into the top bend, pursued by Hales. It is still the 3 riders from the front row of the grid who lead it, but Toby Hales finding out the hard way that the outside line down into the first turn hasn't really been working particularly well here today. You think back to Gary Birtwhistle getting muscled aside in heat number 1, to Rob Mir in the initial running, ending up right the way back down the field, and Toby Hales has been out-muscled into the first turn by Leah Toklov and doesn't look faster than Toklov at this stage of the race. He's squirrely, he's getting all out of shape, and if anything, Kai Fort is closing in here on Toby Hales, who still sits in second place, who still sits in a direct transfer spot, so he might be content to just stay where he is for the moment at least. Fort though looks faster, and he'll be keen to take the scalp of the 2018 champion Toby Hales on the number 20 machine for the moment at least. It may well be the number 1 that he rides with in 2019, of course, having claimed that title. A podium finish at every round so far this season, 5 out of 5 and 2 victories, including day 1 in the Amman Valley. But Toby Hales looks set to be defeated here by Leah Toklov, who is pulling away out in front. This is going to be an excellent first race victory of the 2018 Pro class for Leah Toklov, because Toby Hales just doesn't have an answer, looking over his shoulder there as they come into the final lap. Kai Fort is still well clear of the rest of the group, so he should make automatic transfer through to the semi-final stages. Anthony Brown best of the rest for the moment, but this has been a quiet one. Heat number 3 coming around the final turns for the final time. Leah Toklov with a start to finish victory, her first of the 2018 season in the Pro class, and what an excellent start to the day for the number 37. Straight through to the semi-finals. Great choice of starting position she'll have as well for the semis, and after beating the 2018 champion. Gets a thumbs up from Toby Hales, but Hales will be frustrated about that. Defeated down into the first turn, and then no position changes from there as the top 3 settle down. Hales makes it direct through to the semi-finals, but the story of that one, heat number 3, a first victory of the campaign for Leah Toklov. Confirmation then of the official results for Heat 3, and it's Leah Toklov, Toby Hales and Kai Fort who move directly through to the semi-final stages. Anthony Brown, Wesley Aegis, Sky Adams, Chris Jenner, James O'Hara and Hub Breedveld, who failed to finish, will all have to go again in the last chance qualifiers. The elimination races, Heats 5 and 6. in the opening round here at the Greenfield Oval. Before they return to the track though, Heat 4 will see the last of the round 1 preliminary races. All of the riders will have appeared on track once after the completion of this one. The front row of the grid, George Pickering, Neil McQueen and Tim Orcott. Brilliant qualifying performance for the number 109. A podium finisher in the intermediate class back in Kings Lynn. He appears off the outside of that front row. Mike Fisher, Jordan Miller and Jake Mason comprise the middle row. Les Stevens, Andrew Murphy and Brad Hardman complete your lineup for heat number 4. As I said, excellent performance from Tim Orcott in qualifying. Will he be able to qualify directly through to the semi-final stages? Great start from the middle row from the number 19, Jordan Miller, who's going to try and get amongst it on the first turn, but Orcott holds his top 3 position. Remember, each of the last 2 races have seen the 3 riders on the front row of the grid qualify through directly to the semi-final stages, and the top 3 are breaking away once again in this one, heat number 4. A big gap emerging behind Tim Orcott, ahead of Jordan Miller, who sits in 4th position, Jake Mason in 5th, and then Mike Fisher is where the battle is, I think, for 6th position at the moment, just holding the inside line and holding that position for now, but it means little in terms of qualification to the semi-finals as he dices with Les Stevens, runs Stevens wide there, Hardman trying to get through up the inside line, but this is all playing out in 6th, 7th and 8th positions, and those 3 riders all involved in a squabble, but dropping back from our 3 race leaders, the 3 riders who, as things stand, will move through to the semi-final stages. Mike Fisher on the tail here of Jake Mason and battling for all he's worth, but as I said, that's all outside of the qualification positions at the moment. That's for P5. Jordan Miller tagging on to the back of the top 3, but making no impression for now at least. Fisher trying to go a little bit wider than Mason that time around the top turn, but that's not really working, and it's sticking to the blue groove, sticking to the inside line and keeping it smooth. That's proving pivotal so far, and our current race leader is doing exactly that. It's George Pickering, looking set for his 5th race victory of the 2018 season, pulling clear at this stage ahead of Neil McQueen in 2nd position. The number 7 will be pleased to move through direct to the semi-final stages. 3-point scoring finishes from 5 rounds so far for the number 7, and he'll look for a good result to crown his 2018 season, his first among the pro riders. George Pickering then takes the victory ahead of McQueen in 2nd place, and 3rd going the way of Tim Orcott. Excellent from him just to make it through to the semi-finals. Remember, he's an intermediate rider, 8th in the intermediate championship, and for a 3rd race in succession. The front row of the grid proving pivotal. Starting has been critical so far, with the best qualified riders, of course, starting towards the front of the grid in this opening round. Pickering wins it then ahead of McQueen in 2nd and Tim Orcott 3rd. Fast start from Jordan Miller, but he couldn't do much with it. He takes 4th place, and no change for 5th and 6th in the end. The only challenge from Les Stevens getting pushed aside by Mike Fisher and then falling prey to Brad Hardman. But no change, meaningful change among the top positions, and George Pickering making that a straightforward lights the flag victory from the inside of the front row. A good start to his challenge here today compared to his direct rival in the series overall, Gary Birtwistle. Remember, came down on the final turns with Peter Most and will now have to go in the elimination phase coming up next, heats 5 and 6. So both Peter Most and Gary Birtwistle appear in this one, heat number 5. They're just 1 race away either from elimination or qualification through to the semi-final stages. Peter Most goes off the inside of this front row, while Gary Birtwistle will line up off the back row of the grid. That's the difference between what happened to them after the fall in heat number 1. Most was quickly up to his feet and able to recover 5th position. Birtwistle suffering by contrast and eventually coming over the line narrowly ahead of Gary Inman out at the back. So Birtwistle's got the hard work to do, but it should be achievable. The top 6 progress from this one to the semi-final stages. Each position gained, though, will be critical in determining grid position for that semi-final. There'll be nothing tougher than trying to come through off the back row of the grid in the semi-final stage against strong performers, and the key to it will be to pick up a top spot in either heats 5 or 6 to try and give yourself the best possible grid position for those semi-final stages. Confirmation of the lineup here then, with Peter Most off the inside of the front row, Wesley Agius, Sean Kelly and Anthony Brown completing the front row. Martin Mills, Chris Jenner, Simon Parkin and Sky Adams on the middle row. Hub Breedveld, Gary Inman, James O'Hara and Gary Birtwistle, the riders who finished 8th and 9th in their opening outings, completing the lineup here off the back row of the grid. So settling in for the 5th race of the day. This is the first time that we'll see any of our riders eliminated here at the Greenfield Oval. The 7th and final round of 2018. No one wants to end their season on a bum note. Everyone looking to end the campaign on a high. Hub Breedveld is the last rider up and into position after his fall first time out. He gets back up to the start line. So we have a full quota of 12 riders for the first time here today as we get underway, but not Wesley Aegis. He's the one rider who doesn't move as we get underway, and that's going to cost him a place in potentially in the semi-final stages. As the riders filter through, we're already one rider down, and Gary Birtwistle is fighting his way through. Here he is challenging for a place inside the top 6. In fact, I think that is 5th position now that Gary Birtwistle has managed to get ahead of Martin Mills. So it just took a lap for Gary Birtwistle to clear the traffic really and find his way up into a provisional qualification position. Now he's around the outside of Sky Adams, comes through for another place gained. He's up into 4th and now on the tail of Anthony Brown. Anthony Brown on the number 47 machine, holding the racing line well. Gary Birtwistle is going to find it gradually harder as he makes his way up through the field to make these overtaking manoeuvres. Anthony Brown has moved across him there to block him out, moves Birtwistle off the blue groove, off the racing line altogether, and Gary Birtwistle has to recollect himself to have another go here for 3rd position. Meanwhile, Peter Most is looking comfortable out in front. I said he'd only managed one race victory so far this season. That at the opening round of the season in Kings Lynn. He had a great meeting at Kings Lynn. Well, he leads the way out in front here at the Greenfield Oval in heat number 5. Gary Birtwistle has now cleared Anthony Brown. Can he get a top 2 finish from this one, heat number 5, or is he going to run out of time to get to Sean Kelly, the number 33, who holds 2nd position for now? I'm sure that Birtwistle would like to pass Kelly and go off after Peter Most and get some revenge for heat number 1, but he's not going to get that far up the field. He is going to get 2nd position though by the looks of it, as he steamrollers Kelly coming off turn number 2 and runs him off the racing line on the top turn. Kelly and Birtwistle have a little bit of history there after heat number 1, remember, and no incident among them this time either, as both march on through to the semi-final stages. Birtwistle will be delighted but also probably relieved after that one. It was a risk to his challenge for 3rd in the championship. He had a great meeting around the Greenfield TT circuit earlier on this campaign, and now on the oval he'd like a similar result. The winner, of course, of round number 4, Gary Birtwistle, finding his way through there and taking a position inside the top 6 to qualify through to the semi-final stages. Confirmation of that result then: Peter Most, Gary Birtwistle, Sean Kelly, Anthony Brown, Sky Adams and Martin Mills all qualify. The remainder of the riders all intermediate contenders, and some of them have scored points for the intermediate championship as a result of that race. Now we move on to the last of the round 1 races, heat number 6, the 2nd eliminator of the day. We've already seen 6 intermediate riders eliminated last time out. Joe Banks, Max Hunt, Jordan Miller and Jake Mason line up off the front row. Mike Fisher, Chris Hatton, Sky Adams and George Sturgis on the middle row. The back row, Vince Hurst, Andrew Murphy, Les Stevens and Dan Ridge, although it looks, in the absence of Vince Hurst, as though he has been withdrawn following his crash in the opening 4 races of the day. And Dan Ridge now suffering from some mechanical problems, trying to get that bike started. The number 28 wheels it off onto the infield, and it looks as though we're down to just 9 competitors out of 12. Well, this was already the weaker of the round 1 elimination races, because Boasty and Birtwistle had both ended up in heat number 5. This one then offers an opportunity to some of the lesser lights to qualify through. Jake Mason has taken the lead ahead of Joe Banks in 2nd position. Max Hunt occupies 3rd. Jordan Miller at the moment in 4th position. The battle for 6th is with Brad Hardman and George Sturgis. Sturgis has managed to get clear of Brad Hardman. Remember that Sturgis and Banks, who've once again drawn one another in this elimination race, are dicing it out at the moment for the top positions in the intermediate championship, along with Martin Mills and Wesley Aegis. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that those two could still feature on the championship podium, as Max Hunt gets down the inside of Joe Banks and claims 2nd position. Banks won't be too disappointed about that. He still occupies a place among the qualifiers. The top 6, remember, progress here, running way deep on the top bend, Jake Mason, and just missing the apex of turns 3 and 4 altogether. Max Hunt comes through to inherit the lead. And Jake Mason, who was looking set for his second race victory of the 2018 campaign, instead drops behind Max Hunt, and it could be a first win for him as he starts to pull away. Ahead of Mason in second position, Joe Banks occupies third. Fourth position is still with Jordan Miller, and at the moment, no change for sixth place. And George Sturgis is up inside those qualification positions as we see Joe Banks at the moment running around on the inside line in third position. A bit of a pack starting to form up behind him. Fourth, Jordan Miller. Fifth, the number 170 now of Chris Hatton, so that is a change. He's worked his way through Chris Hatton up into P5 and up into a provisional qualification position. Good riding from Chris Hatton. Now he's dicing on the outside line of Jordan Miller in the run down to the checkered flag. Miller holds on ahead of Hatton. Brad Hardman will miss out on a qualification position as George Sturgis holds on for P6. So Chris Hatton, who finished behind Sturgis in heat number 2, gets the better of him there in heat number 6, but both move through to the semi-final stages. A relief for George Sturgis in particular as he challenges for a place on the Adult Intermediate Championship podium for this season. Brad Hardman, Mike Fisher, Les Stevens, Andrew Murphy, Dan Ridge and Vince Hurst, of course, Hurst failing to start there, are all eliminated before the semi-final stages. And in that one, heat number 6, the top position settled down pretty early on. A bit of a surprise, Jake Mason drifting off when he looked to have that one settled, but he still qualifies through to the semi-final stages, so won't be too disappointed about that. The second round of races then here at the Greenfield Oval. It's semi-final time. We've whittled down 36 riders to 24 as we get underway with the second round. We'll eliminate a further 2 over the next 2 races before the last chance qualifier, which will be the last opportunity to move through among the 12 riders to the grand final itself. 3 different heat winners featuring in this one. The winners of heats 1 and 3, Gerard Bilo and Leah Toklov, appearing off the front row. They've both gone for outside starting positions. Second place from their opening rides, Toby Hales and Mike Hill line up alongside them. They've made their selections for the front row then, and it will be Mike Hill on the inside, Toby Hales alongside him, Gerard Bilo on gate 3, and Leah Toklov off the outside. The other heat winner is, of course, one of the elimination race winners, Peter Boast, who took heat number 5, and it looks as though he'll be going from the outside of the middle row. The riders who finished third in their opening outing, Kai Fort and Paul Young, of course, had the opportunity to choose before Boasty, and then Gary Birtwistle are slotted in off gate number 3 on the middle. So that middle row, Kai Fort, Paul Young, Gary Birtwistle and Peter Boast. Riders for the back row will be Martin Mills, Sky Adams, Anthony Brown and Sean Kelly. Those are your 12 riders then for semi-final number 1. The top 5 progress direct to the grand final. The rider who finishes in last position will be eliminated here, and the remainder will go through to the last chance qualifier, but only 2 of the 12 riders in that LCQ can qualify through to the final. So it's much better if you can to make it through from the semi-final stages within the top 5. 8 laps in which to do it as the number 75 Paul Young pulls off at the last moment. So that's 1 rider down already, and he will be your eliminated rider. Less pressure on the rest then as we get underway. Mike Hill with a fantastic start from the inside of the front row, and Mike Hill is your surprise early race leader. Through up the inside line into second position is Gerard Bilo. Hill has gone too deep. Bilo hits the front at the end of the opening lap, and if he moves Hill wide here, Toby Hales might have an opportunity to come through for second place. He's practically cutting the grass there, the number 20, as he tries to get the better of Mike Hill. Oh, we've got a faller, and a spectacular one at that, the number 40, and that race is going to have to be stopped, no doubt about it, as the red flags do indeed come out. Sky Adams, I think it was, had already pulled up. There was no doubt in her mind that that race was going to have to be stopped. The number 40 had somersaulted over the side of the machine and down off the track altogether. The paramedics instantly on the scene, which is great to see, and hopefully neither rider nor machine any the worse for wear. But that was a very spectacular incident indeed for the number 40 Kai Fort, who qualified direct from the opening 4 races of the day with a 3rd place finish in heat number 3, who had an inside starting position in that heat number 3 and who was up towards the qualifiers in that first semi-final until he went down, all out of shape coming off the second bend, the bike spitting him off to the side and outside of the track limits. And we'll go again with a restaging of this semi-final number 1. But understandably, Kai Fort, who thankfully is walking away from the scene of the incident, looks somewhat weary after that quite heavy spill on the exit of the second turn. Doesn't look as though Fort is going to be taking his place in the rerun as he walks away from the track. And the rest of the riders will now be encouraged up towards the start line with the medical staff back into position for a rerun of semi-final number 1. Other than that crash in heat number 1 between Boast and Birtwistle, we hadn't had too many dramatic incidents here today, but that one certainly was spectacular as it was worrying as well. Paul Young on the infield here looks set to return to the track, so that restart has worked out very well indeed for the number 75, because he looked set to be eliminated having pulled off at the side of the track, and he gets a second bite of the cherry, and in the absence of the number 40 Kai Fort, that's changed the complexion of the eliminated rider from semi-final number 1 altogether. Mike Hill it is who's made a fast start once again, this time moves up Leo Toklov, and Toby Hales comes through up into second position, and Gerard Bilo has got to do the work from behind, coming down the inside of Leo Toklov into turn number 3. Hill leads at the end of the opening lap. It's Hales up in second position. Oh no, Peter Boast is side by side with Gary Birtwistle over P5, the last of the qualifying slots from this one. Gary Birtwistle has done well to clear Peter Boast actually, and now gets around the outside of Leo Toklov. Toklov goes a bit deep on turn number 3. Hill's got out of shape. Boast has passed Toklov. Young has passed Toklov as well, but Toklov gets back around the outside. Boast has come down the inside of Mike Hill to take 4th position away. Gerard Bilo's trying to pass Toby Hales. Well, we had some quieter races in the opening 4, but the action has come alive. It's semi-final stage, and the riders are battling for all their worth for grid positions and for qualification slots to the final. Bilo going all the way around the outside. Hales here, the top 2 in the 2018 championship, going head to toe, and around the outside again comes Gerard Bilo. He won't give up on the slightly wider run. Hales is hooking it up well on the inside. Didn't look particularly fast in his opening outing, but looked strong here, and he runs Bilo totally across turns 1 and 2 there, and Birtwistle gets up the inside to split the duo. It's Hales now who leads it from Birtwistle in second, and Gerard Bilo is relegated back down to 3rd place. And while the top 3 are squabbling, Peter Boast is gaining ground on all of them. Young up into 5th position. How did he manage that? Paul Young is up inside the qualifiers. Oh, Toklov's gone down. Toklov and Sean Kelly, I think that is the number 33, are both down. And I thought the red flag was waving there, and so did Toby Hales, because he slowed up. And Gary Birtwistle has come around the outside of him. I'm quite sure the red flag was showing on the top turn. And again, the red flag appeared to be showing there on turns 1 and 2. Yes, the red flag brings a halt to that race. But there was some doubt among Toby Hales and Gary Birtwistle, and Hales is gesticulating wildly there on turns 3 and 4. So that race comes to a stoppage, but real chaos in the latter stages after Toklov and Kelly had gone down. The red flag comes out to stop the action. Came out first on turns 3 and 4, I'm quite sure, and eventually Toby Hales slowing down, but initially he was waving his hand. He appeared to be slowing coming off the 4th turn. Gary Birtwistle continuing on, and only eventually do the riders all come to a halt. I think that race is going to be declared. We had met more than 2/3 race distance in semi-final number 2, but a little bit chaotic there as we eventually got to a conclusion of semi-final number 1. Confirmation then that the race is awarded. Hales ahead of Birtwistle and Bilo. Not a great result for Bilo. He may well have to go off the middle row of the grid in the grand final. Peter Boast and Paul Young eventually taking the last of the qualification positions from semi-final number 1. So Mike Hill, Martin Mills, Sky Adams, Anthony Brown and Leah Toklov will have to go again in the last chance qualifier. Finding out then who will join our first 5 qualified riders as we now line up for semi-final number 2. The front 4 riders have already picked their starting positions. George Pickering off the inside, the Heat 4 winner. Michael Dykstra, the Heat 2 winner. Runners up from the opening round, Neil McQueen and Sam Hurst. And then the Heat 6 winner, the winner of the Eliminator, Max Hunt, goes off the outside of the middle row with Jake Mason, Rob Meir and Tim Orcott on the inside of him. The back row of the grid will be Joe Banks, Chris Hatton, Jordan Miller and George Sturgis. So this could be a really important race once again in the intermediate class for a third time. Sturgis and Banks have drawn one another as we get underway with semi-final number 2. Good start from Banks on the inside of that back row, but as for the top positions, it's Michael Dykstra tucking in on the inside line coming off turn 2, chasing down George Pickering, the early race leader. Rob Meir is up in 3rd place. He's inside the qualification positions, as is Max Hunt in 4th. And at the moment, the last of the automatic qualifiers would be Sam Hurst. But he's got his hands full because on the outside of him here is the number 7, Neil McQueen, trying to take the last of those transfer spots. No doubt about it, up front it's starting to settle down. Meir looks slightly faster than Dykstra, the top 3 breaking away. Hunt under some pressure from Sam Hurst, but if he just holds position, that will be good enough for him to qualify. Neil McQueen is the rider who needs to make progression here, who needs to make up a position, and he is challenging on the tail of Sam Hurst. 2 distinct groups have started to form, 1st to 3rd and then 4th to 6th. But remember, Neil McQueen is set to miss out as things stand down in P6. He challenges on the inside of Hurst. Hurst got out of shape coming off the top turn, but McQueen couldn't quite capitalise down the inside into turns 1 and 2. And for the moment, Hurst holds that last automatic transfer spot in P5. Good ride once again here from Max Hunt. This is more promising stuff from him, a podium finisher in the intermediate class back at round number 4, and looking set for another good result here at Greenfield. Familiar surroundings for Max Hunt, and it will be another good haul of points if he makes it through to the grand final here today. Sam Hurst is still with him, but Neil McQueen's starting to drop back, and I don't see any further position changes likely in the latter stages of semi-final number 2. George Pickering just looking over his shoulder. He took 2 race victories in Kings Lynn. This is going to be the 2nd time this season that he's managed a double race victory. As you see, Jordan Miller there's pulled off at the side of the circuit, so must have must have come to grief last time around. Still the challenge ongoing for P5. The yellow flags are now withdrawn. Battle for 2nd position as well. Dykstra still holding off Meir. Meir is closing as this race goes on, but I can't see much incentive for Meir to find a way through. It would give him a slot on the front row of the grid if he can pull it off. He looks to the outside line on turns 1 and 2. And how about that battle further back? They're going side by side for the last of the automatic transfer spots as well. That's the focus of our battle on lap number 8. The last of the laps here for semi-final number 2. Pickering takes it, Dykstra 2nd, Meir in 3rd, 4th going to Hunt, and indeed in 5th position in the end, Sam Hurst. But I really thought that Neil McQueen had found an extra gear on that last lap there, going side by side with Hurst around turns 1 and 2. He couldn't quite find a way through, and the two now discussing their battle on that last lap as they go back towards paddock. And a good ride from Sam Hurst to hold on to a qualification position to the grand final. Neil McQueen will be among the favourites to qualify from the last chance qualifier. In fact, he's the first of the riders who fails to make automatic qualification there. Jordan Miller is eliminated. Of course, his fall, he fails to score. The other 6 riders directly ahead of him will have a second opportunity next time out. Back-to-back races for them in the LCQ. But great action for 5th position. Good battle for 2nd place as well. That one more settled, thankfully, for those of us who are keeping an eye on proceedings after semi-final number 1, which was, by and large, absolute chaos. Last chance qualifier then. We already know the identity of 10 of our riders for the grand final. 2 more will be decided in the last of our round 2 races. Neil McQueen is the first rider up into position after his efforts there in semi-final number 2, finishing in 6th place. Next to choose will be Mike Hill after he finished 6th in semi-final number 1, although I actually don't see Hill out onto the track yet, and Mason, Mills and Banks have all started to settle into position, so we'll see how that settles down if indeed Mike Hill can get out onto the track. But Mike Hill is due to feature off the front row here, as are Martin Mills and Jake Mason, who both finished 7th in their semi-final appearances. Then it'll be Joe Banks and Sky Adams, who finished 8th, Anthony Brown and Chris Hatton, who finished 9th, Leah Toklove and George Sturgis, who finished 10th, Sean Kelly and Tim Orcott, who finished in 11th. Of course, in the case of Leah Toklove, she's a little bit out of position after her crash in semi-final number 1, and what a contrast that was to finish 10th in the semis after picking up a brilliant victory in heat number 3. Reminder, the majority of the riders who make it through to the final you'd expect to be pro riders, but we've got 6 intermediate riders, so half of this last chance qualifier are intermediate riders. Only 1 intermediate rider has made it through to the grand final so far, that's Max Hunt. So if no more intermediate riders make it through from this last chance qualifier, then Hunt will be your intermediate winner, and what a performance that would be for him after finishing runner-up at the Greenfield TT earlier on this season. Right, Mike Hill is now up into position. He's gone for gate 3 on the front row, and Joe Banks is just being moved to the inside of the middle row here. Anthony Brown can't take off the promoter's hat. He's trying to get all the riders to move backwards so that everyone can fit in off their correct starting positions, or more to the point, their correct choices. The front row is already settled. Neil McQueen, Martin Mills, Mike Hill and Jake Mason. Then Joe Banks will go off the inside of the middle row. This is a really important race for Joe Banks, the winner of the second round of the season in the intermediate class at Peterborough. Started slowly at the opening round in Kings Lynn, but he is within touching distance of this intermediate title, and if he could move through to the grand final here, that could well be enough for him. Impossible to keep up with the maths in the final round of the season, the adult intermediate class, simply because there are so many moving parts in this knockout format. But it'll be interesting to see if Banks does manage to make it through and what his rivals can do, because if he does move through, that should give him the title. Here we go then for the last chance qualifier, with intermediate championship honours potentially on the line as well. Jake Mason makes the start from the outside of the front row. Brilliant start, in fact, the best he's made all day. Neil McQueen is up with him in second position. At the moment, those two would be moving through. Then it's Mike Hill, who, remember, is a pro rider, separating Neil McQueen from the number 136, Martin Mills. Mills is another of the riders in contention for the intermediate class title, but he had a disappointing performance last time out in the Amman Valley, so he's got ground to make up, and he could do with moving through to the grand final, because Joe Banks is tucked in right behind him. I think this would be enough for Joe Banks to seal the intermediate class title, subject of course to official confirmation, but Banks looking good even though he's outside of the automatic qualification places. Neil McQueen looks down the inside of Jake Mason. Mason saw him coming and didn't look like he was too bothered about keeping up the fight. He'll look to the inside line, but he knows that second position will be enough to move through to the final, and whether you're first or second in the last chance qualifier, you'll still appear off the back row in that final. So Mason, who's got almost the length of a straight advantage over the number 35, Mike Hill, in third position, doesn't look too concerned about giving up that race lead. Behind the number 35, meanwhile, they're going side by side for position, and that's Sean Kelly trying to get up the inside of the number 136, Martin Mills. Mills very concerned, looking over his shoulder and looking what's going on. Knows he needs to make up points, knows he could do with making it through to the grand final. I don't think that's going to happen, and he's only going to be one position ahead of Joe Banks in the context of the Adult Intermediate Championship. Meanwhile, George Sturgis is stuck out at the back in this last chance qualifier, and in fact a yellow flag has come for him after an incident on the top turn, and taking advantage of it, Jake Mason comes round Neil McQueen off the final turn and snatches a victory. Will that be confirmed as such? Neil McQueen saw the yellow flag and slowed up, but they'd passed the incident. So as far as I can tell, it would be absolutely okay for Jake Mason to make that overtake on Neil McQueen, who was caught napping there. Mason wins it, McQueen will get second, both of them will march on to the grand final, but McQueen had done the hard work to take the victory there and misses out on it. Mason confirmed as your winner, McQueen takes second, the two qualifiers. Mike Hill is eliminated, 13th overall. He will take 4 points in the pro class, 3 pro points for Leah Toklove and 2 for Anthony Brown. But the focus there really was on the intermediate category, and Joe Banks, although he has only taken 7th position in that race, takes 12 points in the intermediate class, and that should be enough for him to be crowned champion in that intermediate class, subject of course to official confirmation. So having done the maths on the intermediates, I can confirm Joe Banks will be our 2018 Adult Intermediate Champion. Only one intermediate rider's made it through to the grand final. That's Max Hunt, so he will be the winner here at round number 7. Joe Banks will take 4th position behind Martin Mills and Sean Kelly, but those 12 points are enough to move him 3 points clear of Matthew Porter, who will take 2nd overall. If Martin Mills had managed to make it through to the final, he would have had a shot at the title, but instead he falls just a single point short of Matthew Porter and takes 3rd overall. Sean Kelly and George Sturgis will round out the top 5. The season will finish with just 7 points separating 5 riders in the adult intermediates, an entertaining end to their season. Now our focus returns to the pro riders, because it doesn't really matter, quite frankly, what Max Hunt does in this grand final. He can't upset the apple cart, he can't score points in the Pro Championship in 2018. So the focus on the pros then, as we prepare to get underway with a 15-lap grand final. George Pickering goes off the inside of the front row, Toby Hales alongside him, gate 3 Michael Dijkstra, and the outside of that front row Gary Birtwistle. The middle row, Sam Hurst on the inside, alongside him Rob Meir, Max Hunt the lone intermediate and Gerard Bilo, and from the back row Neil McQueen, Jake Mason, Paul Young and Peter Boast. A bit of a surprise to see Boasty off the back row of the grid, having finished 4th in semi-final number 1, but he clearly fancies that blue groove run down to the first turn. Let's see if he can capitalise on it. He hasn't made a bad jump, but up front it's George Pickering who leads the way. They're side by side for 2nd position. Gary Birtwistle gets up the inside of Gerard Bilo, moves him aside, and Toby Hales comes thundering through now into 3rd position. So the top 2 in the championship, who are set to finish as such as 1st and 2nd this season, are in 3rd and 4th on track, and the 2 riders dicing over 3rd overall are leading. It's George Pickering who looks set to take that 3rd overall as things stand. He's up ahead of Gary Birtwistle, who's relegated to 2nd. Toby Hales has got his hands full now. Gerard Bilo looking for a way through and onto the podium. Hales has an unbroken record of podium finishes for 2018. Bilo looking set to end that as he comes around the outside, and he's clearly faster than Hales. Gets across the front of him into turn number 3. He runs across the apex of turns 3 and 4, but Hales suffers coming off the turn, and Bilo now moves through down the inside of Gary Birtwistle into turns 1 and 2. Moves Birtwistle totally out of the way. Locks up coming off turn 2, but holds the inside line. Having locked up though, the momentum is now with Gary Birtwistle. Can he keep it on the blue groove this time around? Yes, he can. Gary Birtwistle in fine style recovers 2nd position. It's Pickering then who leads us ahead of Gary Birtwistle in 2nd, Gerard Bilo in 3rd, and Toby Hales in 4th position, dropping back from the top 3. It doesn't look as though he's going to be able to keep that podium record for 2018. Naturally, he's starting to come under some pressure now from Michael Dijkstra. Dijkstra and Rob Meir is going with him, and Peter Boast swiftly closing in on that group directly ahead of him. Gary Birtwistle looking to the inside of George Pickering. Pickering looking down at his machine, goes defensive into turn 3. Has Pickering got a problem? He's certainly slowed up over the last lap or so. Birtwistle's going to come around him, and quite comfortably as well into turn number 1. Pickering struggling for pace at the mid-race phase, and Gary Birtwistle is your new race leader. Winner here on the Greenfield TT earlier on this campaign. Could he do the double and win on the oval as well? George Pickering in 2nd position, looking under threat now from Gerard Bilo, who's trying to come around into turn number 1. Pickering is holding the inside line firm, locks it up slightly coming off turn 2. Bilo's got the better run and comes all the way around the outside for 2nd position. Now the battle is joined up front surely between Gary Birtwistle and Gerard Bilo. Birtwistle already a winner this season. Bilo the winner back in red car. Down the inside goes Michael Dijkstra to pass Toby Hales, so 2 fights in 1 here, and Peter Boast has passed Rob Meir and is now going to pass Toby Hales as well, so Hales getting beaten up. As further up the field, George Pickering getting beaten up as well. He's dropped 2 positions. Hales has dropped 2 positions over the last couple of laps as well. George Pickering dropping back. This will be good news for Gary Birtwistle. This should be enough for him to take 3rd position in the championship overall. He's not going to get to Hales or Bilo in the series standings, but he could take the final step of the championship podium. Gerard Bilo might stand between Gary Birtwistle and a place among the top 3 for the 2018 series, because Bilo is closing on Birtwistle all the time and things are about to get tasty up front. It's Birtwistle versus Bilo, the two Bs. As I said, both winners this season. Toby Hale's also a winner, the winner of rounds 1 and 5. Aidan Collins as a wildcard rider for Peterborough, the only other round winner in 2018. Birtwistle's drifted and Bilo shows him his back wheel as he forces his way through to hit the front. Gerard Bilo, your new race leader, ahead of Gary Birtwistle in second. As I said, we've got two separate groups going on here. Paul Young has now got up ahead of Rob Meir, I think, and Toby Hales has continued his dissension through the field. What a disaster the final round has turned into for Toby Hales. Good news for him that he already had the championship sewn up heading into Greenfield. He's now under pressure from Neil McQueen, who's coming all the way around the outside of him. Sam Hurst has already got the better of the number 20, so Toby Hales could find himself at the back of the field very soon if he's not careful. Heading in now to the final lap, Gerard Bilo leads us into it with Gary Birtwistle occupying second position. Third is still with George Pickering. He's dropped well back from the top 2. I wondered if he was suffering from mechanical problems, but we haven't seen any recurrences of that, and he will take the last step on the podium here today. But it's Gerard Bilo who wins round number 7 here on the Greenfield Oval. He is delighted about that. The winner at Redcar back at round number 3 has since seen his championship challenge ended, but he is back on top here in Greenfield, and the Spaniard who makes the journey for each of the rounds of the DTRA series finishes with a flourish, and he will also finish as the highest scoring total points haul. He will also finish as the overall highest scoring rider in terms of total points, Gerard Bilo, with 93. But remember, the dropped round regulation meant that Toby Hales already had the championship sewn up before we came to Greenfield. So Toby Hales, your winner overall. Gerard Bilo will finish this season just 2 points from him after the 20 points he netted there in round number 7. Great ride from Gary Birtwistle to hit the front, but Bilo would not be suppressed, and a forceful manoeuvre coming off turn number 4, giving Bilo the victory. Birtwistle staying with him to the finish. George Pickering had been up with them earlier in the race, but gradually dropped back. His wait for a first victory will continue. After a runner-up finish earlier on this season, George Pickering makes his third podium appearance of the 2018 campaign behind Gary Birtwistle and Gerard Bilo. The championship, though, goes to Toby Hales.
Well, join us now, Toby Hales. Toby, many congratulations on your success this year. It's been a real good rise up the ranks for you, and a really successful campaign.
Yeah, definitely. I've been pleased to win it after I've only been in the pros about 3 years, and I've got, I think, 5th, maybe worse than that, and then I got a 3rd last year. So this is a lot better. And
a really consistent campaign with podium finishes throughout. So you know, fully deserved this year.
Yeah. Well, apart from today where it's gone tits up, but I'd been on the podium every round, so I managed to get it before. I'd already won it before this round, so that was good enough.
And whilst you say perhaps not the afternoon you wanted today, you were still involved in plenty of fine action. The second race, especially today, where there was plenty going on.
Yeah, all the races before the final was good. The semi-final was a good race as well, but just the final, I think the tyre went off or something. Didn't feel good at all.
Well, despite that, many congratulations on 2018, and we wish you all the best for next year as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Confirmation then of the results of the final race of this 2018 season. Bilo, Birtwistle and Pickering, your podium finishers. Best result in 3 appearances for Peter Most, who takes 5th position. Michael Dijkstra ahead of him in 4th. Dijkstra takes 5th overall behind George Pickering, but ahead of Rob Meir, who was beaten by Boast in the end. The other position that had to be settled here today, 3rd overall, going the way of Gary Birtwistle by just 3 points over George Pickering, after finding his way past him in the grand final. Plenty of action right the way to the finish in what's been an entertaining 2018 season.